when I came across Code Realize on Hulu, I passed it and I skipped it, and it kept being suggested to me, and I kept skipping it, and I kept this, nope, not gonna watch it. It looks horrible. It looks horrible. It looks horrible. It looked horrible. And then it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't sleep. And I said, fine, Hulu. You're trying to shove it down my throat. I'll swallow. And I watched it, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved it so much that I made my husband watch it with me the very next day. And he said, baby, didn't you see this already? I'm like, yeah. And now you're going to watch it. And so he liked it, except for, what did he say? He said, it reminded him of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And I've seen it before. I've seen that movie. It didn't remind me of that. I mean, you can't just take a group of people with different powers and call it League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I mean, you can take anything of any anime, any cartoon that's similar and say the same thing. It's not. So one of the reasons why I was skipping this is because I don't care for harems. I just don't. And then for those who don't know what a harem is, it's usually one girl, several guys, or one guy and several girls. And to me, like, Tenchi Muyo was a harem, but I liked it. It was very interesting. It really wasn't too much on, oh, we love Tenchi, yada yada. Every character had their own story, you know? But Diabolic Lovers, that was a clusterfuck of nonsense, and I watched it twice, and I watched the second one, More Blood, and I watched that one twice just to see if I would like it or get it, or maybe I missed something. And no, I fucking hated it. I hate it. I still have not watched it to this day. Now, anyways, this anime comes from a game, which is freaking awesome. The animation is smooth. When you have Van Helsing, Abraham Van Helsing, cold-hearted person as he's first shown, he is just very smooth. I mean, he's twirling his guns, and the animation is just smooth. Love it. Absolutely love it. The drawings, the lines, all of it is very, very consistent. There's one anime that I watched that the thing is, like, I don't even remember the name of it because that's how badly inconsistent it was, and that's how unremarkable and non-memorable it was. I don't remember, but I just remember watching a few episodes and going, man, I don't like this at all. Anyway, so I'm watching this anime. You have this girl who looks like she should have strings attached to her. She looks the perfect little doll. She's adorable. She's dressed in this steampunk fashion, buckles and stuff everywhere, little gear headband. And if you touch her skin, the fabric will melt and your skin will burn and blister. So she has a poison in her, which to me goes, okay, this is not going to be a love story. And even if it is a love story, it's going to be one of those impossible love stories because you can't touch her, you can't kiss her. And so if you want to fuck her, you are out. No, it's not even happening. Your dick will fall off, you know? So, okay, this is not going to be a love story, but you have this girl, you have these guys. So you have Lupin, who is, as he's known, a gentleman thief. You have Impy, who's the greatest mechanic and the greatest scientist. He's the greatest everything. He's the greatest cook too. And then you have Van Helsing, who is a vampire hunter. His story is actually pretty fucking tragic in this anime, but see, Lupin's is kind of tragic. You have Saint Germain. He's a nobleman. You also have Frankenstein. There are so many animes with Frankenstein. This is not even funny. If it's going to be in London, it's probably going to have to deal with Frankenstein. So you have Victor Frankenstein, who also has a very, very tragic story. So, I just want to go ahead and I'm going to spoil it. Lupin and the guys, they find a way to basically kind of get rid of the poison inside of her. So when that happens, her and Lupin, her being Cardia, her and Lupin do get married. Which I think is like, okay, you took the impossible love story to the possible. And I think I cried when this happened. You know what? Yeah, I did. I actually did cry. I had like little tears, not like sobbing and crying my eyes out, but like I remember just watching it going, Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Like wiping my face. And my husband comes home, he's like, why are you crying? I'm like, I'm not crying. I'm watching anime. Shut up. He was like, okay. Took a shower because he just got home from work. But this is such a creative story. To me, it's actually better than Devil's Line, which I also just finished watching a few days ago. I binged that one as well, because you have this girl who is weak and delicate and soft-spoken, and she finds courage. She has these friends which help her, and they're like, hey, you need to learn how to protect yourself, and they teach her martial arts, they teach her how to drive a car, they teach her how to use a sword, they teach her so many different things until she finds herself and finds love and finds the courage to continue living, even though, as Victor Frankenstein found out, she actually does not have a beating heart. She really is not alive. In her story, you think with the poison is tragic. Her full background story is so freaking tragic. It's painful. So I'm actually going to start with Cardia's story. Her name is Cardia Beckford. She is the daughter of Isaac Beckford, and she is the sister of Finis Beckford. So her father was a scientist, and they lived in a village that was running short on food, food shortages. And he was just trying to find a way to get more crops, to grow more food, as what scientists do when there's a shortage. What happens? He's standing behind a pulpit in a church. He has a large cross behind him, and people are telling him that science is bad. Ever since you came here, there's been nothing but trouble. Things have just gone wrong. And he's like just taking a step back, and he looks absolutely terrified. He's like, dude, I'm just trying to help. They don't care. When he goes home, his house has been set ablaze. His children burned alive. His wife burned alive. And he falls to his knees screaming and crying. This is not the kind of world he wants to live in. So he brings back his daughter and his son, and he uses them as keys to his godlike immortality. He becomes a god. He turns his soul into a hologram, and he becomes part of this machine that can destroy everything, turn everything into ash, because he believes the world is so fucked up that he has to destroy it and start over, that people need an authoritarian God to lead them on the right path. And it's so sad because you actually feel for his pain. He turns his children into these perfect life-size beings, and he makes hundreds of copies of them. And it's just like, I get it. I get your pain. But he turned his pain into something fucking awful. You're going to have your son who only wants you to love him, he only wants you to acknowledge him. You're going to turn him into basically the key. And the jewels you put into your daughter, the hologurium. I always butcher that, but this is a hologurium. And that poison in her, she'll never know love and affection. She'll never be able to hold hands, not even with a friend. You have her, and she is going to destroy the world. She is the key to destroying everything. Everything. You put that weight on her. You tell her she's a monster, and she must always live in isolation. Her story is so tragic. Van Helsing, his story, he was basically almost like a tutor. He trained hand-to-hand combat and I think it's like swordsmanship to Count Dracula, the son of the vampire king Delacroix. And he's put into position by Finis Beckford, who's trying to fulfill his father's terrorist plan. He says, hey, I want you to kill them. And Helsing is like, no, because he's practically family. They're practically his family. And Finis basically says, all right, here's the thing. You kill them or I kill your family. Helsing is put in a very, very shitty situation. He has to choose which family. So of course he chooses his wife and his son. And he destroys the vampire home. It's a very beautiful mansion. And the vampire king, Delacroix, is laid back, his eyes in shock, his mouth agape, his body completely lifeless. And Helsing is just holding his sword, and he's panting, and he looks distraught. He just killed his family. And he turns around, and there's little Dracula. And he says, "Dad, what's wrong? Amidst the burning building, Dad, what's wrong?" And when Dracula sees Helsing and his father's dead body, he cries. I mean, the tears well up in his eyes. They just fill with tears. And he screams. And then you're transitioned to Helsing on his knees, holding his son, covered in blood. His wife on the ground close to him, also covered in blood. His home destroyed. And he says, "I fulfilled my duty, and yet you still killed my family?" It was horrible. Another tragic story. And then you have a character that I kind of like. I kind of like Victor Frankenstein. But even he has a very, very screwed up story. So it's not based off the Frankenstein that we know. It's like a brand new character. Almost completely a brand new character. So he is trying for Queen Victoria to create the Philosopher's Stone, which he later says was stupid. It was impossible. I don't know why we even tried. It was just foolish. So he accidentally instead creates a chemical. And that chemical is just, it's a poison that kills you very slowly. What is something it's like a gas. It's a liquid that turns into a gas. I believe it's called Zectorium. And he was just like, "Hey, I don't want this being used for the wrong thing. I don't want this being used at all." He begs, he pleads with Queen Victoria, "Hey, can't use this. This is wrong." She goes, No. We need to make sure we show the world our military might. So we're going to do it." And he's running. He's running to where the vampires are. They're all dead. They're all laying on the ground, painful expressions on their face. Some of them look like they've been crawling at their throat because they were gagging and choking. And he ran off. He ran off and became a wanted man. And Isaac Bedford used what Frankenstein created in his daughter Cardia. It all comes full circle, right? It all comes full circle. And then you have Impy. Impy doesn't have a bad upbringing. I think Impy and Saint Germain, the only ones that don't have a fucked up story. Only ones. Impy, basically, it doesn't show that he has parents, but he has someone he calls master, sometimes teacher, who looked like he was an inventor. And when Impy saw a steam engine train, he wanted to be a scientist. He wanted to be an inventor. He wanted to be an engineer. And he's like, "I'm going to go to the moon one day. I'm going to go to the moon." And he's been pushing for that all his life. Not very tragic, right? Saint Germain is a nobleman who is part of a group called The Idea, who basically try to keep history on track and destroy anyone who tries to interfere with history. And he's tasked with killing Cardia. And while he gives her the poison, he tells her, "Don't do it. Don't take it." And she goes, "It's okay. I know. You got to make sure it looks like you gave it to me. But I hear you. I understand what's going on." he has trouble trying to find the right path. He does not want to kill his friends. And then you have Lupin. Lupin appeared like fucking Tuxedo Mask. And I'm looking at him, and he starts talking, and the first thing I think is kitties. Kitty cats and tigers. I am brought back to a scene in Circus Black Butler where Sebastian is at the circus and he sees a tiger and he's playing with the tiger's paw pads. And I'm just like, wait a minute. He sounds an awful lot like Sebastian. Turns out, same voice actor. So that makes sense now. But Lupin is what he calls a gentleman thief. He's kind of flamboyant, but not really. And he has these beautiful yellow eyes, dark hair. And he's kind of like a magician thief. He uses smoke bombs and sleeping aids and all this chemical stuff which Frankenstein creates for him. Well, actually for them. And uses it. And MP too. MP sometimes helps with that. And uses it to get away with anything. He can steal anything. He stole it looks like what are those big things in the sky that look like little rockets? I forget what they're called. But it's he basically stole planes. He stole airplanes. He can steal anything. He stole a safe. He stole a girl. Like, he steals everything. And one of the corny things he says when he grabs Cardia is, "I come to steal your heart." And the first thought I had was, oh God, you are cheesy. You're so freaking cheesy. But the hologram in her chest is her heart. And that's what he was trying to keep away from their enemies, Twilight. Which I know they could have thought of a better name than Twilight, but beggars can't be choosers. So, and I like Twilight because they have the plague mask with the bird beaks. They have that with top hats and capes and wearing suits. So I thought that was really funny. But his story is a little tragic. So he was a homeless little boy. He's taken in by this older man who is a thief. And he sees that his master is starting to take the wrong path. He's a drunkard. He's beating people in the streets. He's going the wrong way. He himself thinks, I gotta fix this. I gotta get my master back on the right path. Well, what happens is Lupin gets his master shot. And he dies. And he holds that. And he thinks that by saving Cardia, that will be his atonement for his sin. It's a lot on a kid, right? But that's his tragic story. And Finis, who is the bad guy of this anime, looks like a perfect little doll with his white cropped hair, with the two buns on the side, and his flowy clothes. All he wanted was to be useful to his father, for his father to love him, to acknowledge him, to accept him. And even in the end, his father thought of him as a failure, disgusting, horrible, useless. After his son Finis did everything he could to destroy London, to bring his father's dreams and wishes to the present, to fruition. And his father still didn't care. And even Cardia, seeing her brother dying for this idea, tried to save him. But he believed he was unsavable. Father still did not love him. And that's tragic. That is just sad. It's almost like, it kind of reminds me of Black Butler, almost, but not quite. The animation to me is a little bit better. Though some of the characters do look like Black Butler characters. Lupin looks like a cross between Sebastian and Seal. And then MP kind of looks like Grell. So there's that. With the red hair, the bright red hair and the length of it and all that. So they kind of look like each other. But it was a very creative story. They took an impossible love story, made it possible by saying, okay, you know what? we're going to listen to Victor Frankenstein. And what's his idea? You know what? Let Cardia be used in the machine that is her father to destroy London at the very last moment. And we have to time this carefully. Break her out of that machine. And his hopes was, by doing so, that poison in her would be drained enough where it would basically be rendered obsolete. And it worked. And they destroyed the aircraft and the entire thing of machines. And she can now live a normal life, holding hands with people, eating something other than a sandwich, being able to sleep on a bed without it melting under her, to pet a dog without burning it. And it was so good. So Van Helsing had told little Delacroix, because Dracula took his father's name, you can have my life. In the end, little Delacroix did not kill Helsing. It's almost like he understood. He got it. Now, I really wish there was a second season or make it into a manga, but they did not. So that is it. But you do get closure. Unlike a lot of other animes, you do get closure. Like, I finished reading the manga of Devil's Line. There really wasn't any fucking closure for me. I was still like, no, what happens next? But, I mean, you work with what you're dealing with. But anyways, I do hope you guys do watch this. I don't know if it's on something else, but I do know that it's on Hulu. You're going to absolutely love it. Well, this is Bunny Spoils It. Later.